No one really noticed humanity until we stopped asking for permission. At first, they smiled at us the way you smile at a toddler gripping a plastic sword, proud and harmless. We brought coffee, jazz, sarcasm, and this absurd habit of turning every domestic object into something that could maim. The galaxy found it quirky. Endearing, even. Like a raccoon banging pots in the attic, annoying, but too amusing to evict. They didn't think we'd bite. But when 40,000 civilians on Epsilon 6 vanished in a light show of plasma and ash, Earth stopped playing by the rules. The Galactic Assembly called it a tragedy. An unfortunate misunderstanding. The Crest Syndicate had acted rashly, they said, as if that explained the glass cities and the shadows burned into metal walls. 1,000 languages, yet none could pronounce the word justice the way we meant it. So we left the room. No war declaration, no long-winded speech. Just silence and the scraping of chairs against the polished floor. A species that once tried diplomacy walked out, and never looked back. The Black Star Compact didn't arrive with fanfare. 5 ships, ancient and angry, dragged from the classified vaults of dead-end black-budget programs and reborn with stolen tech, insane math, and unapologetic intent. Not the biggest, not the prettiest, but built with one question in mind: what happens when the galaxy underestimates a cornered species? Maggie Pseudo stood in the heart of the Bloody Mary, staring down tactical displays like a surgeon daring the body to fail. 5'6" of gravitational defiance. She wasn't bred for command. She earned it the hard way, through scars, defiance, and the kind of quiet rage that made men flinch without knowing why. "Mother," she said, not turning her head. "Target confirmed, Commander," replied the AI. Her voice always sounded like someone's favorite aunt who also ran secret assassination programs. 1 Crest heavy cruiser. Bone Harvest class. Complement, 847. Tactical value, moderate. Emotional satisfaction from destroying it, immeasurable. A beat. "I may have run the satisfaction calculation 17 times," Mother added, almost shyly. Maggie's lips twitched, but the smile never formed. Ty Mercer, hunched over his console like it owed him money, let out a dry chuckle. Koshu did love a dramatic entrance. He was thin, wiry, one of those kids who grew up on half-built colony ships, breathing recycled air and sleeping next to bulkheads that moaned at night. You didn't get muscles out there. You got precision. You got speed. And you got the kind of eyes that didn't blink unless the ship was spinning. "We've got friends incoming," he added. 7 vessels. ETA, 12 minutes. I could ask them to wait, maybe send flowers. "Rafe," Maggie called out. "How's our surprise party?" Rafe Onari crawled out from the guts of a weapons bay that wasn't supposed to exist, covered in coolant and attitude. "Almost done. Just had to convince this beautiful death goddess that she didn't need 3 redundant safety interlocks." He slapped the side of the panel. Something hummed in response. Not a normal hum. A predator's purr. "She's ready." Maggie turned back to the display. "Then let's ruin their day." There were no rousing speeches. No trumpets or banners. Just a quiet nod, a chorus of acknowledgments, and a ship that moved like it remembered being feared. The Bloody Mary didn't fire first. That would be cliché. Instead, it slid into the path of the Bone Harvest like a dancer gliding into a blade's edge, every motion humming with precision and threat. The enemy captain hailed them, probably to issue warnings or empty diplomacy, but the signal never connected. Maggie had already cut the comms. "Let them wonder," she muttered. And then the Bloody Mary screamed. Not audibly, not in any traditional sense. But its weapons systems roared to life with such force, such coordinated violence, that space around it seemed to flinch. Dozens of micromissiles slipped into quantum sublayers and emerged inside enemy hulls. Railguns fired rounds laced with hacking nanites. The Bone Harvest didn't explode, it came apart, piece by piece, mind before matter. Ty whooped. Rafe cursed in reverence. Even Mother sounded giddy. Structural failure in progress. That was satisfying. Emotionally and tactically. The Bone Harvest debris hadn't stopped drifting when the rest of the Crest fleet arrived, 7 ships, sleek and smug, assuming they had strength in numbers. They didn't understand. Not yet. But they would. Ty adjusted their trajectory. "We're outnumbered. I assume surrender is off the table?" Maggie didn't blink. "They took 40,000 lives. We're just here to return the favor." From across space, the Crest ships hesitated. Briefly. Perhaps they were calculating odds. Perhaps they were remembering what humans looked like when we bled and smiled at the same time. The next volley wasn't just a strike. It was a message written in plasma and fury. Humanity isn't fragile. We were just waiting to be provoked. The Bloody Mary dove straight into the heart of the enemy formation, a blur of weaponized gravity and creative spite. Rafe's new modifications allowed the main cannon to fold spacetime enough to punch through shields instead of around them. One ship lost its reactor core. Another cracked in half like a dropped ceramic plate. Still, the Crest fought back. Shields flared. Missiles flew. Hulls groaned. Ty cursed as a blast rocked the ship. "We've got a hull breach on Deck 3. Reroute pressure. Seal it off," Maggie snapped. "No casualties." "Not today." One of the enemy's ships managed to lock onto them. Its main battery spun up, powerful enough to slice a small moon in half. Mother's voice cut in. "Commander, shall I ask Rafe to activate Project Autumn?" Maggie's gaze narrowed. "It's untested. Highly theoretical," Rafe added, already flipping switches. "Dangerous. Definitely. Do it." The Bloody Mary vanished. For 0.3 seconds, it ceased to exist in measurable space. The enemy's beam passed through the empty void. Then the Bloody Mary reappeared, behind the enemy, inside their defense perimeter. Project Autumn worked. Too well. The enemy ship didn't just explode. Its entire formation wobbled, confused by what had just happened. Momentum shattered. Confidence evaporated. In those milliseconds of doubt, humanity struck again. It was never about winning through numbers. It was about turning the battlefield into a mirror and showing the galaxy what stared back when humans stopped holding back. The last Crest ship tried to run. It didn't make it. When the silence returned, it was total. Ty slumped in his chair, breathing hard. "You think they got the message?" Maggie stared out into the debris-strewn void, eyes cold. "They'll learn." Mother's voice was quiet. "Incoming communication. From the assembly. They want to discuss terms." Maggie didn't answer right away. Then she smiled. "Tell them we're busy." The assembly didn't understand humans. Not really. They thought we would come roaring in, demanding blood and revenge, breaking everything in our path. They were wrong. We were precise. The message had been sent, written in shattered steel and radioactive signatures. But the assembly still clung to the illusion of control. They thought this was a tantrum, a momentary lapse in protocol. A flare of human emotion. But Earth was done explaining itself. Back in the Sol system, the Black Star Compact activated its second phase. Not just 5 ships now, dozens. Woken from slumber. Rebuilt, repurposed, repainted with names pulled from old Earth tragedies and myth. Leviathan. Emer's Wake. The Red Widow. The Bloody Mary led them all. Maggie stood alone in the command deck's observation bay, watching the stars shift as they warped toward their next target. No words. Just gravity and memory. Ty finally broke the silence. "They're scared, you know. I tapped into a comm relay. Crest ships are pulling back. Some are deserting entirely. The ones who survived? They're broadcasting human positions to everyone. Like we're cursed." Maggie didn't look at him. "We are. Beg pardon? We're the curse they earned. Every species that sat in that room and said tragic instead of unforgivable. Every diplomat who measured 40,000 dead against protocol instead of punishment. They invited us to the table thinking we'd behave. Now they'll choke on the silverware." Ty gave a slow nod. "You've been working on your metaphors. Mother's been helping." The AI chimed in helpfully. "I've been studying ancient Earth literature. Shakespeare. Vonnegut. The John Wick Chronicles. Very inspiring." Ty snorted. "Great. Our murder ship is now quoting gun fu films." Rafe's voice came through the comm. "Captain, package is prepped. We're 10 minutes out from the Kiro relay hub. Any sign of resistance?" "Plenty. 2 destroyers, a carrier, and what looks like a defense platform. Moderate firepower. High overconfidence. Just how we like it." The Kiro relay hub wasn't a military target, strictly speaking. But it was the backbone of Crest communications across 3 sectors. Take it out, and the syndicate would be blind, deaf, and increasingly stupid. They arrived cloaked in gravitational shadow, slipped into the system like a knife between ribs. The Bloody Mary spun through orbital debris fields like it was dancing. Ty guided them in with surgical precision, while Rafe's systems hummed and clicked and powered up for something entirely illegal. Then the lights flickered. Mother's voice dropped to a whisper. Incoming signal. Not Crest. Assembly channel. Audio only. Maggie raised an eyebrow. Put it through. The voice that came through was silk and wrought. Commander Pseudo. This is Envoy Talix of the Assembly Crisis Council. We request an immediate cessation of hostilities and an invitation to discuss reparations in good faith. Maggie leaned in slightly. Define good faith. A willingness to negotiate. You mean a willingness to forget? A pause. We are prepared to offer Earth a position on the high seat. Access to exclusive trade corridors. Autonomy in local matters. You think we want a seat at your table? Is that not what humanity desired? Maggie's voice dropped. Humanity wanted peace. What we desire is truth. And you buried it under protocol and paperwork. We advise restraint, Commander. You should advise a helmet. She cut the channel. Rafe chuckled. We're definitely not getting invited to the next diplomatic summit. Ty leaned back. You know, we used to dream about making first contact. Proving we belonged out here. Funny how all it took was one massacre for us to remember what we really are. And what's that? Maggie asked. Survivors. The Bloody Mary fired. The Chiral hub never stood a chance. One pulse from Rafe's system destabilized its core relays. A second volley turned the carrier into a glowing husk. The defense platform tried to spin up kinetic barriers, but the Bloody Mary had already slipped past, laced through its blind spots like a surgeon threading a needle. When it ended, there was no celebration. No cheering. Just silence and the drifting debris of another severed artery in the Crest Syndicate's empire. Maggie turned away from the viewport. Next target? Mother's tone became solemn. Crest Central Command is located on the moon of Dural 6. High population density. Military infrastructure. Civilian presence. Maggie exhaled slowly. I need options. I recommend Operation Red Soil. Rafe winced. You're not serious. I am, Mother said calmly. We used it on Earth simulations for planetary insurgency. Minimal orbital bombardment. Focused psychological collapse. No craters. Just fear. Ty looked sick. We're becoming them. No, Maggie said firmly. We're showing them what mercy looks like when it wears armor. They moved again. The rest of the fleet followed. Dural 6 came into view, silverlit, bustling, unaware. They didn't glass the surface. They didn't vaporize cities. Instead, they shut down the lights. Every communication node. Every power grid. Every transport link. Gone. Then came the messages, names of the dead on Epsilon 6. One name every 30 seconds. Broadcast on every open channel. Over and over. For 7 hours. By the end, Crest officials were weeping on public feeds. Children stared at blank screens, parents clutched each other, and the war began to sink in. Not just as loss, but as consequence. When the assembly tried to intervene, their message was intercepted and auto-responded with a single line. This is not vengeance. This is memory. Maggie finally stepped away from the console, exhaustion lining her face. Ty looked at her. How long do we do this? She didn't answer immediately. As long as they need to remember. Rafe added quietly. And if they forget again? Maggie's eyes narrowed. Then we remind them. They started calling them sleepwalkers. Not humans. The ships. Not because they moved without sound, though they did. Not because they struck without warning, though they did that too. But because once you saw one, really saw one, something in your brain refused to rest. Entire outposts began shutting down at the mere ping of a strange drive signature. Convoys rerouted around dead systems. Entire races, proud and unshaken for centuries, began building their beds deeper underground. The assembly insisted it was temporary. Panic, not policy. But fear is a policy. And Earth had just written the new doctrine. Inside the Bloody Mary, things were changing too. Ty's hands shook more now. He tried to hide it behind bravado, jokes, caffeine. But it was there. In the corners of his eyes. The silence between sentences. Maggie noticed. She noticed everything. He caught her watching one evening while he recalibrated the inertial drives. You going to say something, Commander? You haven't slept in 2 days. None of us sleep. She didn't argue. Instead, she handed him a ration bar and a stim patch. Take both. Then take 4 hours. Non-negotiable. He stared at her. We're still human, right? We're not gods, if that's what you mean. No. I mean, he lowered his voice. We're doing all this. Changing the course of empires. But how many of us even want this anymore? Maggie didn't flinch. That's not the point. Then what is? That we can. Ty looked away. And what happens when we can't stop? Rafe interrupted over comms, saving them both. Commander, you're going to want to see this. The display lit up with sensor data, intercepted comms, and something new, a signal. Not from the assembly. Not from the Crest. From someone else. They call themselves the Oanari, Rafe said. Neutral. Non-aligned. Never involved in any interstellar war since their uplift. Ty raised an eyebrow. Then why are they calling us? Maggie stepped forward. Open the channel. A strange voice came through. Layered. Harmonized. Like it wasn't built for just one throat. This message is directed to the humans of Earth. We have watched your awakening. Observed your grief. We did not know you're dead. But now, we carry them with us. The bridge fell silent. We will not fight for you. But we will remember. We offer no fleets. But we offer this, our memory. So that your war does not become a myth. So that it is not lost beneath peace treaties and historical edits. Maggie nodded slowly. That's more than we expected. We suspect it is more than most will understand. The signal ended. Rafe blinked. Well, that just happened. Mother chimed in gently. I believe that was a gesture of honor. Yeah, Ty whispered. And those are rare out here. The war continued. But it shifted. Other species started watching more closely. Not out of fear, but curiosity. What made the humans keep going? Why didn't they fold after the first few victories? Why didn't they claim territory, plunder resources, demand crowns? Because they didn't want more. They wanted never again. On our own station, Crest diplomats found themselves blocked from every negotiation. Their trade convoys vanished. Their credits became worthless. No one wanted to be next on humanity's list. So the Syndicate did what all old empires eventually do. They broke. Not from war. From friction. Planets seceded. Admirals defected. One commander even turned his cruiser toward Earth and offered full surrender, not for survival, but for redemption. His ship's bridge had a mural of Epsilon 6. No words. Just the image. Burned into the glass with laser etching. Rafe stared at the broadcast. Do we take it? Ty shrugged. A war ends when someone forgives. Or when there's no one left to fight. Maggie gave no answer. She was staring at a new report. A secret lab. Hidden deep in a red dwarf system. Crest scientists. Working on something forbidden. Rafe pulled the specs. Biotech. Experimental. Maybe viral. Maybe something worse. Could be a doomsday trigger if they think they're cornered. Ty's voice turned sharp. A last strike? Or a final tantrum? Maggie looked tired. Beyond tired. The weight of command pressed into her bones. Then we go. The Bloody Mary and 2 sister ships warped in, silent as ghosts. They didn't fire. They didn't speak. They just appeared. The Crest scientists inside the lab activated shields, power cores, dozens of failsafes. But none of it mattered. The Bloody Mary used a precision pulse, shutting down every system with a frequency that whispered sleep into their circuitry. Rafe's voice was quiet. Facility is intact. No resistance. Ty exhaled. We're not killers. Not when we don't have to be. No, Maggie said. But we are reminders. They left the lab floating, powerless. Then they sent its coordinates to every Crest remnant, assembly desk, and galactic archive. No accusations. No demand for praise. Just the truth. Rafe leaned back. You think they'll get it? Maggie finally allowed a smile. They're not sleeping anymore, are they? Wide heavy check mark. They started burning their own flags. Not humans. The others. The proud banners of the Crest Syndicate. The golden glyphs of assembly peacekeepers. Whole systems broadcasting the same message. We were never part of this. Fear didn't do that. Shame did. By now, the Black Star Compact wasn't just a fleet. It was a shadow in every senate, a ghost in every negotiation. Entire species were rewriting their laws, removing records, blaming their elders. Too late. The galaxy had already seen the truth. The assembly was never about justice. It was about order, and humanity had shattered that illusion like glass under boot. Inside the Bloody Mary, things grew quieter. Fewer battles. More messages. Some were threats. Most were pleas. A few were apologies. Rafe stared at one such transmission. This one's from the Yarthi. Says they regret abstaining from the vote to condemn the Crest attack. They're asking for a meeting. Ty looked up. A meeting? Yeah. In person. No guards. Just diplomats. Maggie's face was unreadable. Set it up. Ty blinked. You serious? They want to talk. We listen. The Yarthi arrived on a civilian transport. No weapons. Just long robes and eyes that blinked sideways. Their ambassador stepped forward, spine bowed low. We offer no excuses, he said. Only an acknowledgement that we were silent when your dead called out. Maggie didn't speak. So he continued. We understand now that your war is not conquest. It is correction. Ty's jaw tightened. Correction shouldn't have cost this much. No, the ambassador agreed. But sometimes the galaxy needs to be wounded to remember it can bleed. He handed over a data crystal. Sealed assembly archives. All communications following Epsilon 6. Hidden transcripts. Military orders. Emergency meetings. We believe the truth belongs to you. Maggie accepted it without ceremony. Thank you. Before leaving, the Yarthi bowed again. We hope to be remembered not as enemies, but as those who finally understood. After they left, Rafe broke the silence. You buying it? Maggie shrugged. Doesn't matter. It's on record now. That's the real war. Ty stared at the crystal. You think the assembly will survive this? Mother answered before Maggie could. No. But something new might. That night, for the first time in months, the Bloody Mary dimmed its lights to Earth-level ambient. A gesture. Small, symbolic. But meaningful. Maggie sat alone in her quarters, listening to an old jazz recording from Chicago, 2153. A saxophone floated through the silence like a tired memory. The war wasn't over. But something had changed. The next day, the assembly called for a full emergency vote. Not to condemn humanity. Not to retaliate. But to disband. They'd lost control. Their systems were splintered. Member worlds were backing out faster than they could be threatened. The vote passed. Unanimous. And then came the last gasp of the old order. A message. Not from the assembly. Not from the Crest. From what was left of both. A combined fleet. 32 ships. Heavy cruisers. Carrier groups. War-optimized AI with self-repairing hulls. A final stand against what they now called the human anomaly. They called it Operation Silencer. It was the most advanced, most coordinated, most expensive armada ever assembled. It lasted 12 minutes. The Black Star fleet never fired a single shot. Instead, they deployed signal mirrors, AI-coded data packets containing the full archive of the war. The names of the dead. The hidden memos. The intercepted comms. The Biolab project. The shamed defectors. The Oanari tribute. Everything. Broadcast to every ship. Every soldier. Every screen. Before the first laser could be fired, command ships began turning around. Whole squadrons shut down weapons. One cruiser self-destructed rather than obey. By minute 9, 10 ships had already defected. By minute 11, all comms went dead. At minute 12, the last cruiser opened a private channel. A single line of text. We were wrong. The fleet vanished into retreat. No shots fired. Just the weight of truth sinking in. Maggie stood in the center of the Bloody Mary's bridge, staring at the fading signatures on the tactical display. No cheer. No fist pump. Just silence. Rafe finally said what they were all thinking. Is it over? Maggie looked at him, not like a commander, but like a woman who had borne the weight of a world on her shoulders. No. Ty tilted his head. But the fleets. It's not over because someday, someone will forget. Some other empire will rise. Some politician will say it wasn't that bad. And when they do, we'll be ready. He swallowed hard. That's heavy. It's history, she said. And we're its memory. In the years that followed, they told stories. Whispers in academy halls. Drunken retellings on trading outposts. Warnings encoded in the core protocols of newborn AIs. About the fleet that didn't conquer, but corrected. About ships that didn't demand surrender, just remembrance. About a species that once played by the rules, until 40,000 of their own were turned to vapor. And instead of grieving quietly, they changed the sky. The Bloody Mary never docked again. Not permanently. She became a wandering shadow, visible only to those who needed reminding. Appearing in the orbital paths of would-be tyrants. Hovering near border conflicts just long enough to make both sides reconsider. Sometimes she broadcast the names again. One every 30 seconds. And wherever she passed, silence followed. Back on Earth, they built no monuments. No marble statues. No holograms of commanders or captains. Only a field, wide open, wild. The grass never cut. The names never chiseled. Because remembrance, they decided, should never be curated. One night, under a black sky freckled with satellites and dust, Maggie Pseudo stood alone in that field. No rank. No medals. Just a jacket with too many tears and a name whispered across half the galaxy. She knelt in the grass and let her fingers graze the soil. Never glassed? She whispered. That's worth something. Ty Mercer walked up behind her. Older. Slower. But still with that twitch in his fingers that said he was ready to fly if needed. You left the fleet. I left command, Maggie corrected. Not the purpose. Ty nodded, staring up at the sky. They still watching us? They always will. Good. There was peace for a while. A decade, maybe two. But empires don't last. And neither does memory. On the edge of a forgotten system, a mining conglomerate uncovered a cache of pre-war Crest tech, hidden AI modules, sealed weapons, unfinished bioweapons. The kind of stuff that made whole species disappear in the old days. They didn't report it. They built with it. They armed themselves. They started threatening smaller colonies, claiming lost territory. Old flags, new blood. And when the Assembly's replacement, the so-called Unified Accord, tried to intervene with diplomacy, those colonies burned. The screams echoed across unsecured frequencies. And then, the stars dimmed. Just slightly. Not from clouds. But from the return. The Bloody Mary came back. Not alone. The entire Black Star Compact emerged from the void like a scar reopening. Sleeker now. Updated. But unmistakable. Ships named after forgotten battles. After children who never grew old. After music and memory and fire. They didn't attack. They just arrived. Above the stolen colonies. In full view. And the world remembered. This time, no missiles were fired. The enemy shut their weapons down before the Bloody Mary even powered hers. Because that's what a myth does. It lives in your spine. It makes your fingers tremble at the thought of earning its attention. Inside the ship, Mother's voice echoed again for the first time in years. Commander Maggie Pseudo. Would you like to resume command protocol? Maggie stepped forward slowly. No, she said, smiling. Let the galaxy govern itself. Let them remember why they were afraid. Let them ask their children, what does a Bloody Mary mean? Let it be a question that keeps tyrants up at night. Ty looked at her, eyes wide. So what now? Maggie turned toward the stars. We sleep. And finally, for the first time in generations, they did.